Great. Thank you, everyone. My name is Priyanka Pide. I'm the co-founder of Kuber9 Initiative. And on behalf of Revolve and Kuber9 Initiative, I'm very happy to welcome you all to this discussion on citizen-led environment action. This is part of the Sustainable India 2024 initiative that we, Kuber9, co-produced with Revolve. It is a collection of articles, interviews, views, which are photo essays, and discussions such as the one we are going to have today, webinars that are housed on the Revolve website to generate more knowledge, discussion, and awareness on India's efforts towards sustainable development. And we are very happy to have with us today some exemplary citizens sharing their journey and experiences of activism. And in absolutely random order, I would first like to go around the room and introduce everybody. I will begin with introducing Sumaira Abdullali, who is the founder of Avaz Foundation. She is an environmentalist and an activist who has created awareness on noise pollution and sand mining and won several national and international awards for her work. She is also a convener of the Movement Against Intimidation, Threat, and Revenge Against Activists, and has had a long association with Asia's oldest and largest environmental NGO, the Bombay Natural History Society. Next, I would like to welcome Mr. Ritwik Datta, who is the founder and managing trustee of Legal Initiative for Forest and Environment. He has worked on environment litigation for over 20 years and is presently involved in litigation before the National Green Tribunal, a principal bench, as well as regional benches of environment on environment and forest clearance related issues. Next, I would like to welcome Radhika Dhingra, who is an environmentalist and social entrepreneur. She founded Badlav Social Reform Foundation in 2019 to address social and environmental challenges. And they have done some path-breaking work on menstrual health and management that I'm sure we'll hear more about from her directly as well. And finally, I would like to welcome Mr. Srirag Kuruvat, who is a senior operations manager with Greenworms Waste Management, where he leads a team of 70 members that provide strategic guidance and solutions to over 140 local self-governments in the state of Kerala. Srirag has pioneered a waste management system that efficiently processes 5,000 metric tons of waste each month. That is setting new standards in the industry as we speak. So welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this discussion. I will begin with a very simple question that I will pose to you all one by one. But as all of you come from very different experiences in terms of citizen action, in terms of your path, but also then what you are doing currently with it. So I would love to hear from you what were some of the challenges you faced and what were the places of courage in your path. And I'm going to begin with Sumaira because I know we've already had this conversation and her interview is already on the Sustainable India website, and I'm sure we'll have your stories as well later, but I'm going to begin with you, Sumaira. You're on mute.
Okay. The greatest challenge, I think, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's so nice to be here and to meet everybody and to meet you again. But the greatest challenge, I think, that I would say I have faced, and a lot of people, my colleagues have also faced, is a lack of awareness and interest in the subjects of environment, particularly some of the issues when I started working on them, noise pollution, illegal sand mining. No one knew what they were. And then the second greatest challenge is the lack of enforcement of the laws that we already have. So we're talking over first a complete lack of knowledge about the issues. And even when we have the laws, the fact that they are not implemented, again, because of a lack of interest in implementing or deliberate will not to implement because it goes against certain vested ingrained interests. both commercial and political. So I think these are some of our greatest challenges. And the challenges are true not only for the subjects that I directly work on, but for the subjects they plug into as a larger whole, which is climate change as a whole. That these are the same issues, the same problems that anybody working on them face, both on the ground as well as on policy, and lastly on implementation.
Thanks, Sumaira. You have not answered my question on courage, but I can come back to you with that if you want to take that up later. I will leave it to you to decide.
Well, I think courage is something you just find along the way because you're forced to find reserves which you didn't know you had, perhaps. So I won't go into the stories now. But I think everybody on this panel and everybody who's ever taken up any kind of an environmental issue is forced to find reserves of challenge within themselves and courage within themselves, which they didn't know they had, because the challenges are so vast. The awareness is so immense, and the lack of implementation, the lack of desire, and the actual forces opposing you are so many. Yeah, I think I leave it at that for now.
That's absolutely true. I'm sure everybody is nodding on this panel, so I feel like it might be similar experiences. But I think you also said something very important on how there is this lack of awareness. And I know, Radhika, you're working in an area that is still considered very much a taboo. So I'd like to come to you next, in terms of what are the challenges that you see, and where do you find your inspiration?
Right. Thank you, Priyanka. Lovely to be on this panel with all of you. And I think I resonate a lot with what Sumaira ji said about both awareness and implementation of policies. Just coming to particularly awareness and especially on menstrual and sexual health. I will have to admit that there has been immense progress since the last 20 years. But of course, we are still a far, far way to go. I think just periods in itself is still a huge, huge taboo. So just starting that conversation, I think, is challenging. But at the same time, there is more reception to this conversation now than earlier. What I also feel is a challenge which comes for both, I think almost all social and environmental issues, is the behavioral change that takes time. So, of course, awareness is one, but we are also set in our patterns so rigidly, and the conditioning has been so solid that it takes time for us to switch towards a different perspective of point of view, or just our lifestyle habits as well. And I think behavioral change plays a big, big role when we are talking about sustainability and environmental initiatives in general. And yes, I think just policies are in place. The implementation is something that we are still very much struggling with. So that's another challenge. To answer the second part of your question about courage, I think I've made my peace with the fact that we won't be able to see any impact as such in at least the generation that I'm working in. It will be much later that we perhaps see or don't see any impact. But when I'm going to the schools, when I'm going to these slum communities, and we are talking about this subject, I think the questions that they come up with, or most of the time, this is the first time that they are having a conversation about female anatomy or periods in general. And the girls are so innocently opening up, being curious, and asking all sorts of questions. And I think that gives me the courage to keep going despite being fully aware and conscious that the impact is not going to be immediate in this field. So I think that's something where I drive my courage from. Thank you.
We have a diverse audience that will eventually listen to this, so I'm sure that will be very inspiring to many. Ritwik, I'm going to come to you next because you have addressed this from the legal side, right? From the side where both Sumaira and Radhika have said there are certain challenges. So would love to hear your perspective and learn a little bit more about your journey.
So, the challenges are multiple. The first challenge, I think, which others have also spoken about, is an overall culture of apathy. That environmental issue is really taken as a footnote in your general discussion. Irrespective of what you say in conferences, meetings, or even in, quotes, it doesn't really translate into real action. So I think that's where the whole issue comes in, that we overall live in a culture where there is large-scale environmental illiteracy. And that has nothing to do with education. That has nothing to do with the degrees that you get. You may be sitting in the highest position in this country, in different institution, and yet you be completely illiterate when it comes to understanding issue. And the second major issue that one faces, looking at what which is known very well as the NIMBY syndrome, the not in my backyard, that, we don't want the problem next to us. So, we want our cities clean. It doesn't matter whether the rural areas are dirty. We want our houses to be made beautiful. It doesn't matter where the sand is coming from. So this is where we also come in, saying that we want to greenwash all our activities. And that, I think, is a very, very big problem. And which many of you may be aware of, is the greatest challenge comes from the government itself. It just does not want to hear voices in opposition. And therefore, of late, this has been the biggest challenge which environmental social groups have to face. The whole volley of what is called strategic litigation against public participation, or SLAPP suits. So various provisions of laws are used against activists, against people at the grassroots level, and that really constrains organizational development, institutional development also, and also the voice of the people. And when we talk about the voice of the people, well, people are ultimately those who speak for nature. It's ultimately nature itself is losing its voice. So I think this is a very worrisome trend that is happening. It's becoming more and more pronounced, where we see environmental groups largely been silenced, and those which prosper today are those who have accepted that silence is the best way to survive. So I think the challenges are many, and yet I think there are many ways to overcome them. And I think groups across the country are trying their best to be the voice of nature, voice of communities. I'll stop here.
You have not answered where you have sought your courage from.
Courage is reactive. When you are faced with the danger, you don't want to escape. You want to take them head on. So therefore, when you take it, and I think the inspiration comes from the fact that, I am in the city, I've got all the facilities, but when I'm representing the local community who are at the village, at the forest, at the margins of the society, and yet they are fighting to protect nature, I think that gives me a lot of confidence, that gives me a lot of courage, and just put myself in their place and say, well, if this poor person is able to face the might of the state, the corporate entities, and all others, well, we are doing a very small thing compared to that. And I think that encourages, me to continue the fight.
Thank you, Ritvik. Very well said. And Srirag, I'm going to come to you next. Green Worms is quite unique in the sense that you have managed to ground up work, with the local self-governments. So would love to hear what your challenges were and what worked for you in your journey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank for your invitation because like I have been working in the basement sector from the last 8 years. So my story is more like on ground, my experience in the on ground, because we are working with around 5,000 waste workers. So I am managing these projects for Green Worms. So I'm when comparing to other speakers, I'm not a founder or a entrepreneur. Or I'm part of a Green Worms journey. That's enough. So when we are discussing about the challenges of individuals, so I'm a person who's working in the ground. So I would like connect with the challenges to my field. So I don't have this sort of analysis. I don't have that much experience. So I would like to share my challenges in my field. So maybe it can connect with the it can connect it. So main problem is the when we are working in the waste management sector, because we are working with the those who are working the like women entrepreneurs, like women also are collecting from the household. So main problem is that we realize that the community behavior, so the like the people mentality. So I use the word like prioritizing. People are not prioritizing the environment or environment cost. So in Kerala, there is a system called Haritha Karma Sena. We can call it at HKS. So they are basically from the social excluded group. So there is a user fee system, only 550 50 rupees for per month user fee system. So around only 50%, because we always Kerala people proud that we are highly literated, because earlier you some of other speakers are mentioned of the literacy and illiteracy and all. So we all are saying that we are very literate. Even when we are looking at the data, only 50 to 60 people are not only participating in the waste management practice in Kerala. So so the literacy and other, when we are discussing literacy and all, but the thing is that prioritizing, people are not prioritizing environment. In my experience, I use that word. So one thing is prioritizing. Second is that the responsibility. People are believing that the primary responsibility of environment and all, the government responsibility. We are always blaming the government. So we are not thinking about what I can do, what I can contribute. And also the earlier mentioned that policy, the government policy and all, policy and regulation act implementation and all, it will reflecting individual as well. And also I have been working the last 80 years. Most of the people are asking about me, why you are working in the waste management sector. I am a postgraduate. After my post-graduation 80 years back, I joined Greenworms. When I am joining the Greenworms, my family members asked that why you are in the waste management sector. You are educated. Why you are working with the dirty waste workers? Still, I am getting a lot of questions from my colleagues and family as well. So people are not feel that it's a dignified job. So when people are working for environment and all, they feel that public, they feel that that's not a dignified job. Most of them are looking for the white collar job. So they don't feel that when people working in the waste management or environment sector, they feel that, most of them feel that that's not a dignified job, that's not a secure job. So so that's most of the challenge facing in my experience. So when we discussing about courage, I don't feel that not much courage required for working in the ground level. It's most like passion and empathy. So I'm seeing that a lot of when 8 years back we are working with around 10 to 50 numbers of HKS members, especially the women entrepreneurs. Now we are working with 5,000. Each year, I can see that a lot of smile in the faces. They are getting good salary and all. That's reflecting their family and as well. So that smile is encouraging me to the sector. That's why I am working in the last 8 years. That's my courage. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And I think in your courage, you also answered your challenge, where it seems that that when good work does take place, it encourages more people to join you, and then whatever social inhibitions might be about joining the sector, they all go away, because these are problems that need solving. And when people like you, get into the field and, get your hands dirty. That's only when the world changes. So now, since this is a webinar, I'm going to throw a few questions out there, and feel free. Hopefully, somebody will take them on and answer them. If you don't, then I will direct them to a particular person. And since we have some amount of an audience, if anybody is listening live, if you would like to throw in some questions, please feel free to throw them in as well. But the idea here is also that since Sustainable India is a general platform, there would be a lot of young people also, reading our stories, but also watching this webinar. I wanted to get to, some of the brass tacks of how, if somebody were to get into a space where they saw a problem and wanted to solve it, what are the different ways in which you could do it. And I know, because I've had this conversation with Sumaira, where I think for Sumaira it was a very natural process. She saw a problem and then figured out the legal ways around it. But having already done that, would there be some tools that already exist within India that you would like to share with a young person wanting to change something in society, whatever that something might be? It could be something related to waste, but it could be something a little bit more controversial. I think Ritvik works on a lot more controversial issues. So how do you kind of navigate that? What are the paths that exist, right, for somebody who's wanting to make a change? Where do they begin? And I'll throw it open if anybody wants to pick up. Otherwise, I will pick on you.
Okay, I'll answer that to start with, and then hopefully somebody else will tag on a little bit. I'll just say that when I was starting and I didn't know how to do anything, the most important thing was to find somebody who'd be trodden that path before and who knew something more about what to do. Because I made so many mistakes, without adequate guidance. Just, I didn't know lawyers, I didn't know journalists, I didn't know the courts, I didn't know anything. I didn't know the administrative system. I knew nothing. So I would encourage people to first find out what it is they're passionate about. And I think there are many young people passionate about a variety of things. We have two younger people here who are working on very different things already. And it doesn't matter what you do. You can pick on sand mining or noise pollution like I did, or you can pick on women, because all issues are connected. And the ways to tackle all of them are similar in a broader sense. So you have to learn how to tackle the social angles, the legal angles, the policy angles, how to do outreach, how to interact with media and journalists, how to do it yourself, social media, all of it. And you have to do it all together. So sometimes I feel like someone like me actually, in a way, does very little work, because my job is to coordinate professionals who can do this work better than me, who can go to schools, do the education part. I don't have to learn how to become a teacher. I don't have to do an LLM and become a lawyer myself. I don't have to necessarily be the best writer in the world and write all the journalism pieces myself. But I do have to have a basic knowledge of these, maybe picked up along the way, and have professionals who can do this job better than me, recognize that they can do these things better than me, and that my role is to give them the information and to kind of put them together so that you have all these things which work together. So I think that's very important. And I think that young people should feel passionate about anything and should remember that you start with a very small thing. When I first confronted a truck and was attacked by the sand mafia, I didn't even know what sand mining is, and nobody else knew either. I just thought it was a very local issue on my local beach. And now it's become an international one, national one, policy, UN, everything. So start with whatever you feel passionate about, but seek help. Don't try and do everything by yourself. You can't. You can't be a professional in everything. So, maybe someone else can add to that.
Fantastic.
So
Yes.
if I may, just taking it forward, I think what is very important to realize is that, well, no issue is a small issue. And I think that's important. I think every issue that we take up is important, has its own relevance. And I think the moment, I think we go through different phase. And the first phase is, well, people make fun of you that why are you working on this issue? There are so many other important issues around. Why take up the issue? The second phase will come in when your work starts getting some impacts are visible, but it's still not really great. And that's when you struggle to keep the issue alive, your conviction alive, and also to convince others to be part of your journey. It's very, very important. You can't do all of it, as Sumaira has rightly said. It cannot be done alone. One doesn't possess that skill, that you cannot be a journalist, you cannot be a lawyer, you cannot be an activist, you cannot be a web designer, you cannot be on social media, you cannot be all at a time. There are some people who may have the talent, but well, it's rare to have that. And I think what is very important is to be ready to face a lot of opposition from your own peers, from your own people who have been with you, when your work starts showing impact. And as I said, I've always said, well, you can take on the biggest of companies in this country, right? And yet you may face the greatest of threat coming from a sand mafia, because that particular person who has a small sand mining contract, illegal, will finish you off if you want to oppose that. Whereas a very big company may think, well, I've got 100 more companies to operate. Why will I get into this? So threats differ. And no issue is small issue. But I think what is very important is to spend a good amount of time understanding the issue, and understanding it in a way that one is able to explain it to the people who are not converted. We actually love preaching to the converted. It's very easy. Talking to a group of environmentalists about any issue is so easy because everyone will agree with you. Can you actually convince a person on the street why this issue is so important, right? Why you need to be concerned about this issue? And so therefore, you must have that communication skill, basically to communicate to the person on the street, to the lawmaker, to the judge in the Supreme Court, why you're taking up this particular issue. And I think that, again, comes with experience. That also comes with years and years, and there is no shortcut to this. And I think we must be ready to face not only failure in the initial one, we must be ready to face failure at every stage, because the threats keep changing. You may think that somebody will attack you here. Well, there will be threats that are coming at a global level, at an international level. So you have to also keep yourself constantly updated about what is happening. Legal changes, policy changes, technological changes, these are very, very critical. So that's what I would say, is to be alert, to be a one for the marathon, but also very important to be ready to sprint where required, because these are things which don't follow a 5-year plan. It actually needs a daily change in your plan to see where your skill is required.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I love how you put it. It's more like a process. So it's not something that a position that is attained, right? It is a process that you have to keep living every day and learning and growing. Radhika, Srirag, would you like to add anything? Yes.
Sure. I think I completely resonate with both Sumaira ji and Ritvik ji, what they've just mentioned. Just coming from the experience of working in the field that I am, particularly on menstrual and sexual health also, I think another thing to note, especially when taking up any environmental issue, is the intersectional approach. And this is me coming from the environmental background and wanting to do something in the waste management bit. My journey started with wanting to see how we can take up the challenge of sanitary waste and introduce maybe sustainable or eco-friendly period products. But I think it was along the journey when I realized that yes, menstrual cups or cloth pads might be a great alternative, but there is barely any conversation happening on periods. So how am I supposed to convince somebody about menstrual cups or cloth pads when I'm not even able to discuss periods with the person. So, and through this journey, I also understood that a lot of such environmental issues are somehow related to the social issues as well, especially in a country like ours where it's the biggest challenge is to provide 2 meals a day or to sustain with the basic resources. There, if I'm advocating about being more environmental friendly, which comes with a cost, can be a little challenging and overwhelming for all. So I think seeing the issues with an intersectional approach can be very, very beneficial in certain fields, especially. And second, what I think worked for us is empowering the community members themselves, and having a participatory approach where the solutions are coming from them and it's not us deciding for them. There's no us versus them, but it's the community deciding together for what the issues are and what kind of solutions that they would want, because they understand the challenges best at the ground level as well. And just again, emphasizing on both what Ritvik ji and Sumaira ji said is the power of collaboration. We cannot do everything on our own. Like if I'm saying that there are other underlying social issues that might be there, maybe I don't have the capacity to take those other challenges as well. But I'm sure there are other fantastic individuals or organizations working on that issue already. And collaboration is the biggest tool that is, I think, going to take us forward. Being in the sector for 5 years, I do see that there is lack of it. But I hope that changes for better. And of course, the willingness to keep learning and adapting as the process goes and not sticking to something that might have been decided as a strategy to begin with, but learning and adapting on the way is something that I would focus on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Radhika. Sridhar, would you like to add anything?
Nothing more. I think Radhika is almost covered.
Okay, great. I think some very fascinating and excellent thoughts here. Um, I'm going to bring up something that you all have spoken about in various ways, right? About how do you, for somebody who's coming up and speaking against an issue, it takes a lot of courage because, as Ritvik, you said that, you might feel that what you're saying is a small issue. And I think Sumaira also echoed the same feeling. And Radhika, you spoke about collaboration, and collaboration is perhaps a way to overcome these feelings, right? You find like-minded people. It is also perhaps a way to create a safe space within which to begin such a journey. So I was wondering if you all had any thoughts in terms of, how one can make this. What are the safeguards that people should keep in mind? Maybe it is. Do you feel in with current social media trends, being active more publicly is helpful, or can that also be harmful? What are the risks of that? Using this kind of new technology in social media and perhaps beyond. But what are your thoughts on these various things that I've thrown out at you?
So if I may speak, see, my point is that, well, you can devise all ways and mechanisms to keep yourself safe, but the world is not very fair. And so to that extent, I think what one should do is not really hide one's work. If you are collaborating, you are doing the work, it should be public. And if somebody wants to make, create trouble from you, you can't help it, because you really can't, because these are issues of social concern. What, Sumaira is working on and what Radhika is working on, well, we can't hide these facts. And whether Srirag, if you're working on this issue, well, we need to publicize it. And these issues of environment are not just local; they are national, they are global, they're transnational. So I always say it's an irony that on one hand, when it comes to the corporate sector or the government, we all talk about collaborations, foreign investments, and then it suddenly changes when we talk about conservation. Oh my God, it has to be local. It has to be completely local driven. There cannot be any outside influence. We suddenly feel like, it has to be all ending within the boundaries of India. And that, I think, is deeply problematic, Because I think what we are doing, and I think each one of us are doing, is actually in furtherance of the constitutional duty. And in order to achieve that, it may annoy some people, but so long as we are in conformity with the law, we are doing something which is for the betterment of humanity and nature. There's nothing that we could actually hide. And at the end, well, there will be a lot of dirt put on you, but at the end of it, you will have to fight that out, and the truth will finally triumph. So I would say that, we should all be ready to face this, and I can just share on a lighter note. I was recently talking to another environmentalist. I'll not name the person or the organizations. So I said, and the person on the other side said, well, unlike you, we have been really safe. We have never had problems with the government. We have never had problem with the corporate sector. We have been doing well. We have been expanding our funding. We have expanded our team. So I said, what's the essence of that? He said, let's put it, she said, well, one of the very important things that we did was to ensure that whatever work we do, there is no impact of the work. Right? So it does not annoy anyone. So the government is happy, the people are happy, everybody is happy. So we do what is called work which has no impact. And that for us is security. And my answer was, why are you working at all? Why are you working at all? Because if that is not the purpose, I don't think so you should exist even as an institution. Because if you don't have an impact, well, we are not in this sector to only earn. We are here to make a difference. So that's what I would say.
Excellent. Don't be afraid to annoy people. Great message. Anybody else would you like to add, Sumaira?
Well, I'd just like to say that it's not a question of deciding to annoy or not annoy people, because if you're true to your subject and you're true to yourself, you're going to annoy some people and make other people happy. And that's just the way life is, because people in a democratic country necessarily have different views. And that's what a democracy is about. So I think that it's not just a question of environment, but any other issue that you take up, if you're sincere in what you're doing, then you're true to yourself and you are going to annoy some people. And that is true whether you're taking up controversial issues, non-controversial issues, whatever. If you are not annoying anybody at all, then I don't know if you are working at all. That's a little bit what Ritvik said, but not exactly, because you cannot not annoy anybody, no matter what you do. And so I think it's important to take up the work because you feel strongly about it, and to keep up the work because you continue to feel strongly about it. And people will join you, people will leave you, people who you think are going to be with you always will be your worst critics. Your own friends will criticize you. And I think that criticism is the hardest to bear. You can bear criticism, even very intense criticism, coming from outsiders and strangers and people whom you can say, oh, that's somebody else, that's a person with different views. So what he says doesn't really touch me. But when your friends, your family criticize you, it really hurts. And I think when you talk about courage, it's not just being beaten up and being physically attacked. It's that you have to go through all of that, and that's life. So are you going to go through life with a spirit of living with your beliefs, doing what you have to do, regardless of who approves or disapproves or criticizes or not? Or are you not? And I think that's what really determines whether you can be an activist or as anybody who takes up an issue or not. You can always follow the form of being anything at all. You can be paid to do any kind of a job. But whether you're going to succeed and fail, I don't know. I think you succeed and fail at every day. But at the end of the day, whether what you do makes an impact to yourself and to the world will depend on, your own courage of conviction. I won't call it courage of any other kind, but courage of conviction.
Excellent. And Sumaira, would you like to share any information on Mitra, the movement that you're part of, and what kind of tools perhaps that you all provide or advocate?
Well, I'll speak very briefly on it because I no longer work on Mitra. But when I was attacked in 2000, for the first time by the sand mafia. I've been attacked twice. First time hospitalized, second time there was an FIR filed for murder, attempted murder against me. So when I was attacked at that time, I realized that nearly every activist working on anything at all, even things which were not particularly controversial, at least in theory, was facing some kind of attack, even if it was just a verbal attack. And that there had been people who had been killed and, attacked and all kinds of things. And the police always closed these cases with nothing, with no result. So I set up Mitra at that time. Mr. B.G. Deshmukh was the chairman. And we took up these cases in court and with the government and other things. But after a while, I realized that there were many other groups who were doing a far better job than me, because I just talked about the courage of conviction. So yes, I feel it's a very important thing to work on. But my heart was with the environment, and this was kind of a distraction. So I have done some work on it, but I leave it to others who, are much more vested in it. And I actually, a lot of the people being attacked were journalists who are very well organized. And I think journalists and activists and environmentalists and almost anybody else being attacked for a public reason are very allied. So I would rather rely on them.
Thank you, Sumaira. Radhika, I'm going to bring to you the side of the question, which is more on using new tools, and social media, that I'm sure you experiment with more, and would love to hear how that has made the life of an activist easier, or has it made it tougher, or what are your views on it?
I definitely think it's bits of both. Social media as a tool can have massive reach. It's a great tool to understand, learn what's happening across the globe and on various issues. I think for me, social media has been a great tool for me to understand so many issues, especially on gender and sexuality. I don't think I would have been that aware or that empathetic or sensitive if I didn't see that side of the story, because obviously this was not something that was taught to us in our schools or college life. So I strongly believe that social media has the power to get the message out there, to educate people. But I also feel that there is a lot of information, and I know there is the social media fatigue that might also happen. There is also a run for numbers, reach, and the algorithm is changing every now and then. So it's too much pressure on somebody who is using that as a tool to even figure things out. But having said that, yes, I do think that it's a great tool. But I also feel that a lot of actual work is happening on ground, which doesn't ever come across social media. So you can't just rely on that to get your information. I think you need to get on the ground for whatever issue that you might be passionate about and are working on, and see the grassroots organizations that are working in it, because they might not have the means to be on social media or spread that message in a certain way, but that does not mean that the work is not happening or it isn't as impactful. I think it's equally or even more impactful rather. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both, and how you balance it is up to you, is what I
Ritvik, I feel like you've seen both the social media activism and pre-social media. If you had any thoughts.
See, I think social media, I think there is no doubt today, there's no option. Let's be very clear. It's like today saying, well, I don't want to use a mobile phone. I don't want to go in for email and all. So I think social media has a great relevance. But what I see pre and post, and Sumaira may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the pre-social media era, there was a greater tendency to read an issue in depth, rather than going through this 28 or whatever word limits that come in, or even if you extend it, the concentration is very limited. And to that extent, I find that people are given an overdose of information, right? And that actually shocks me, because we don't get the kind of information that we need. We have been given an overdose of information, and there is a complete distraction. So what happened, if you look at it here, that 20 years back or 30 years back, everyone knows about the Narmada movement and the Tehri movement, right? That's not true today. How many would know about the movement against POSCO or Niyamgiri? And let's put it, Niyamgiri was also during the very it was the internet era, but it was not the social media era. But with it coming, we are today at a stage where, yes, we have a lot of likes on social media, but it does not translate into knowledge. And what is also important is the person who's pressing on the like button is not necessarily reading it. We assume that they're reading it, but they're not really reading it. And that to me is the biggest challenge, because what I find today is that the range of issues on which it is possible to bring about change, it's not happening largely because we are needing. I'll just give an example. If you look at the plastic waste management rules, right? I've been attending the INC treaty very recently. I attended in South Korea on the plastic, which was a failure. But the fact is that to a large extent, whatever that you want in the treaty, a large part of the restriction is already part of the domestic law, right? Maybe not in the area of production, but to manage waste. Now, it's not correct to say, well, the government is not implementing it, because like the RTI, right to information, it needs public to be aware, right? So when we look at styrofoam, thermocol, there has been a ban for so many years, and people are wonderfully having coffee in thermocol cups and food and everything there. Now there are already laws, and it took me a lot of time convincing environmentalists, forget about the government. Well, there is a restriction, there is a ban. So why are we making so much noise internationally? Yes, it's fine to raise it nationally, but even if it translates into law, where is the capacity of I'm saying environmentalist to read and actually agitate? Now for that, I think is the problem that comes in, that we are not really willing to go in depth into an issue, because we get diverted and see which it's not fair to blame others. I find it very difficult, for example, now to concentrate reading a whole judgment, because you have a mobile phone, you have an email, you have WhatsApp, everything is coming in, and you have to, people want you to respond immediately. So you're responding to 100 issues, but you end up not addressing one issue in depth. And I think that's where all the polluters are having a wonderful time in this country, because you don't have people who are concentrating on challenging them.
I think a lot
I
of
don't know why. Sorry.
Well, go ahead, Sumaira.
Musik, I don't know why you said I might disagree with you, because I 100% agree with you.
Okay.
And for myself, I have focused on these two issues for this reason, that if I feel that if you do everything together, you are a jack of all trades and you don't really know anything. It's hard enough to coordinate all the different, like social media you spoke about. It's hard enough to start learning social media and trying to put the information out there in very restricted words, when actually it's such a huge issue, and so that in itself is a skill. And so I feel that if environmentalists were to focus individually on something or the other, and then collaborate in a larger sense, we would all be better off than everyone being an expert on everything. It's impossible. Not only from the point of view of not being able to be a lawyer and a journalist and a social media person all at once, but in terms of subject matter.
Yes, absolutely. I feel, for me at least, there was a time when, the news was about the news, but now it's news and 100 opinions. You have to sieve through it all to actually find the knowledge in it. And that can, of course, be a challenge. And I think some very good advice there in terms of going into further depth into whichever issue that you choose. Sridhar, I wanted to bring you in, since you work at the very local level with people on ground. Do you see this is, and of course we have very high mobile penetration in this country, so do you see that as helpful, harmful? How do you use it otherwise, or even?
Sure. So as we discussed, social media is playing vital role in the nowadays. So I feel like that it's very benefit in my experience, because so now if you are an environmentalist or activist, whatever, you can make the noise or make the speak or anything from anywhere in the world. So I'm in a, whether it is I'm from a remote area, from a village, anywhere, I can make a noise. So people are getting more visibility nowadays. So, and also the time consuming, whenever when we are discussing about uh, 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 a typical environmentalist, or earlier we are depending others. If any environmental issues are uh, coming in my village, so earlier we are I need to depend any environmentalistic or political leaders. Nowadays I don't want to I don't want any support from the local political leaders, any other environmentalists. I can make the noise from the social media. So that's enough. From my experience, it is very helpful, because uh, I'm working the ground, more like we are working with the local government. So in the every village, on an average, 10,000 householders are there. Around, in if it is in a urban local body, it's like the population is 1 lakh and above at least. So when we are giving the awareness to the local community, so we can't reach out to all the households within a small time, like 2 3 months, within or 1 year. It's not easy. So when we are using the social media, the municipal chairman or mayor or gram panchayat or village panchayat president, they can easily communicate, because most of the local leaders, like gram panchayat president or our mayor, they don't know how to use this social media effectively. So so in my experience, it's very helpful for educating the people, and and also for the reach out to right people. And also, as we discussed, some negative role also there, because in my experience, in Kerala, there are this Ardha Karma Sena system is there. The women are directly going to the household and they're collecting. So numbers of negative criticism are going on there. So in my experience, the negative videos are getting lot of reach. So when I am talking about the positivities of, and also the beneficiaries of that project, that will not reach. And also the media, the like press, whatever the news, print media, and also the visual media, they are not covering the good news, like about the local government, like any other Cochin Municipal Corporation or Trivandrum Municipal Corporation is done something good for in the waste management sector, they will not cover. And also, if them are posting the social media, they will not get the reach. If some negative news are in the media, that someone is posting in the social media, that will get much reach rather than the positive news. So so the mentality is also important in the social media. People are always searching the negativity. They are very entertaining that sort of news and details. So that's a problem. The social media have the positivities and negativity. Both are there, but we should focus how to use the effectively. So everything have a positive and negative, but we should focus and take it positive side. And that's negativities and criticism is always there, whether it is social media is there or not. That's part of our journey. Take it as like that. That's enough. Thank you.
Very well said, I think. There is this tendency to sensationalize things, but I think perhaps that's just in our human nature. But I think we have only 5 minutes or so left. And I'd like to just go over some of the excellent lessons that you all have spoken about, and then go around the table again to get any last thoughts or ideas that you would like to share with our audience. But I think in terms of lessons for the next generation of citizen activists, or even anybody that wants to go on this path at any point in their lives, you spoke about the importance of mentorship, of creating that collaboration, and working with people, leaning also on professionals, is something that you said, which was very important to understand where what are your limits, and then looking to experts that that could build the bridge that you need, to get ahead in a particular area. To also then overcome the feeling of, oh, is this a small issue? Is this, what are people going to say? Right, and not to be annoyed, not to be afraid to annoy people. I think that is a tagline from Ritwik that I'm definitely going to take and post somewhere. And also, I think most importantly, to one, put in the work, to understand the topic, to keep abreast with the topic, and two, to have the courage to speak to the unconverted, right? Because there are the people that you have already converted are with you and coming with you, but you need to then create that awareness within a larger group. I'm sure I have missed several other points, so I will now go around the room for any last comments, 2 or 3, additional pieces of advice that you would like to throw out there. We will begin with Sumaira because your mic is unmuted.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd just like to tell, especially young people, not to give up, that don't feel that climate change and other issues are so large that you can't possibly make a difference. Because as Ritwik also said, all issues are small and large and in between and everything. And whatever you do makes a difference. So start. The most important thing is to start. If you don't start, you're never going to reach anywhere. So forget how big or small it is, just begin.
Thank
I
you,
think
Sumaira.
that's
Sorry, did I cut you off?
no, that's right.
Thank you, Sumaira. I'll next go to Radhika.
I'm not really sure if I have any piece of advice, but what Sumaira ji just mentioned, I think that's something I am trying to inculcate for myself as well, because sometimes the issues can be extremely overwhelming, and then this self-doubt of what am I really doing? Am I contributing something? And on the larger scale, it can feel overwhelming. So I think what Sumaira ji mentioned is something I am trying to consciously practice, because the issues are many and also manifold. So just ensuring that yes, what we are trying to do might make a small difference in the larger scheme of problems. So that is something that I'm trying to practice. But yeah, just I think what's helped us is the willingness to learn and adapt. And I think that should be for working in any issue or any field. But yeah, that's just something that I would like to share.
Very important words, Radhika. Thank you for sharing. Sridhar, I will come to you next. Last thoughts.
Sure. You were mentioned about the policy and all. So now we have around 4 people. We all are working from different part of the country. So as a person, Sridhar, I'm working in the environment sector. Others are working in the environment sector. But these are some good stories, some case studies. But I feel like that we much need good policy for the environment. So whenever it is, whether it is waste management or any other environmental issues. So in my experience, we don't have much, we don't have good policy like Plastic Regulation Act, and it's amending, it's happening year to year. So and also there are loopholes are there for the corporate and all. So the country like India, we need good policy, yeah, rather than the individual players. It will influence. It will reflect the entire the country process. So I I believe that that will make a massive changes rather than individuals effort. That's really much needed in the country like India. Thank you.
Thank you, Srirag. Ritwik, finally, last but not the least. You're on mute.
Sorry. So what I would say is you should be largely unaffected because of criticism, because of people looking down at you. So long as you know that what you are doing is right, what you are doing is lawful, and what you are doing is ethical. I think this 3 is your test. Now, it should not matter what others are saying to you. If you think you are doing the right path, you are following the law, and what is there is ethically correct. Now, whether it makes a difference or not, you are at least trying to make a difference. And I think that should be the fuel for the work that you do. And to that extent, I think you have to be fairly, let's put it there, immune to a lot of criticism. You can take in positive criticism, make the changes. There's nothing wrong in criticism, but largely you are there for a long haul. That's it.
Thank you, Ritwik. Thank you again, Sumaira, Radhika, and Srirag. This is all very important and useful information, and we will, of course, host the recording on this as well on the Sustainable India 2024 website. I encourage you all to come and visit the website. And I know we have Sumaira's story already there, but if you would like to contribute and write about your work, we would love to collaborate with you as well. And thank you very much for taking this time to speak with us and with all of our readers as well.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much for having
Thank
us.
you. Thank you.
Lovely meeting everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.